Hello and welcome back to another episode of No Splinters. I'm joined once again by Harvey LUFC Radcliffe. Harv, how are you going?
Yeah, very well, mate. Happy as can be for a Monday, really.
Yeah, good. Monday blues and all that. And then,
Yeah.
not that lockdown you can do too much. And we're also joined by a new guest this week. It's former Leeds United Football Club goalkeeper, England youth team under 16, 17, and current Bradford Park Avenue superstar. It's Dan Atkinson. How you doing, Dan?
Oh, never better. Pleasure to be here, you little flirt.
Giving it all the big one. So it's two Liverpool fans to a Leeds fan today, Alf. So you're outnumbered. So be
Yeah,
careful what you're saying.
I am. Don't worry about
I mean, right. I hope you all had a good weekend.
Weekend's been fantastic, hasn't it? Well, apart from the Liverpool result, apart from that, Lampard gone. Brilliant as a Liverpool fan.
I think that's what we're going to move on to. With I'm sure Harvey's been texting me all morning just wanting to talk about Frank. I think
that.
he's got his dream come true ever since the Derby days when Leeds United got beat in the playoff final or semi-final. Sorry, it's come true for you, Harvey. You've been waiting all
Yeah.
year for this.
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
What's that saying? Those who laugh last for the longest. We are laughing now. It's good. It's a good day. Football has a funny way of humbling you, and ever since he gave it the big and beating Leeds a few years ago, dropped Derby at the drop of a hat to go to Stamford Bridge, and he's been dropped at the drop of a hat from his Russian sugar daddy, Mr. Abramovich. Got rid. See you later.
See you later. See you later. Yeah, no, so obviously the breaking news. This is why we're going probably a day earlier than normal, I think. We normally sort of go on a Tuesday, don't we? But Frank's gone. He's left Chelsea. The biggest superstar in Chelsea's history, really. I think you could argue he's the greatest ever player. He's been sacked as manager after 18 months in charge. And I thought we're going to get stuck into it today. Dan, what's your thoughts on the Frank thing? I mean, I know what Harvey's going to say. I think a lot of the listeners will as well. But yeah, I want to hear from you first, and then we'll get stuck in from the big lad.
I mean, I've tried to stay more kind of impartial than a Leeds fan. But it's a strange one for me. I mean, if you are Frank Lampard and you're at Derby, you're doing well. I just don't see why a good manager career kind of would go in the way of Chelsea. He's been a Chelsea man himself. He's a Chelsea legend. He knows that a manager is only there for a year, 2 years tops. It's not going to be there under Roman Abramovich for a long, successful stint. I thought he made great. He did really well at Derby, I think, in that season he had there. I'd have respected him a whole lot more if he kind of went the Steven Gerrard route and really built up a lot of experience before having a go at one of the big jobs. But I'm sure he'll get another job in the Premiership, not too far away. But it's a shame for him, really.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing about Derby. I mean, a lot of people, I think, Harv will probably say that he didn't achieve anything at Derby. And to be fair, he didn't. I suppose he didn't overachieve, but he didn't. He did a decent enough job at the end of the day. Beat the best manager or the second or third best manager in the world in a playoff semi-final, didn't he? Away from home, they went and did a job, and it was an impressive result. That, to be fair, I know they lost in the final, but they were only 90 minutes away from the Premier League, which would have been a massive achievement for Frank. Yeah, so I'll get stuck into it. I've got a few things. I mean, there's been a few things read today that have been very interesting about Frank, and I'll share some maybe a bit of insight. But Harvey, go on then. I'll let you have your 2 pence or 20 pence or whatever it might be on the situation. I mean, I'm sure you're happy to see Frank going, and I just wondered what your thoughts are on why he's gone, what the job that he did at Chelsea, and the legacy that he'll maintain, I suppose, at Stamford
Yeah,
Bridge.
well, I mean, I don't take glee in many people losing their jobs in this current situation, but I think there's an exception. I think there's an exception here for old fragile Frank. I mean, he has got the last laugh because he leaves there with about £10 million in his skyrocket allegedly. But for me, I think you've got some serious arrogance and naivety to go into a job like Chelsea and expect anything other than being sacked within 2 years. And the fact he spent 200 odd million in the transfer window in the summer, I think came back to bite him in the end. I think if he'd have been a bit more, clever with his signings, I don't think he ever had a clear plan for how Havertz would develop. I don't think he had a clear plan for where Werner would fit into the team. I think the only good bit of business was getting rid of Mendy. Obviously, that needed to be done, but then again, not Mendy, sorry, getting rid of Kepa, signing Mendy. I think that was his only sort of real good bit of business that actually genuinely needed. But the only one player that sort of has been a success under the window was Thiago Silva, who he apparently didn't want or didn't fancy, and actually he was the one that's come in and made them look a lot better. But I think if you look at his points per game, 18 months ago he was at Derby. I think you've got to remember that Derby had Frank Lampard, with the caveat that Lampard brought in 3 youth players. One now plays for England full time. So he had an England international in the Championship in Mason Mount. He had Tomori. Those 2 players alone would walk into any Championship squad, and he only managed to finish 6th. So actually, if you think most managers that walk into a job at Derby County don't necessarily get to 2 absolutely top quality Chelsea youth on loan from the start. So he's always had a helping hand in his managerial career. He then walks into the Chelsea job because no one else would want it because they had a transfer ban. They still managed to spend money in the transfer ban. And, if you bring in Jody Morrison as your assistant when you're signing £100 million players, I don't think they're going to listen to Jody Morris because they probably have no respect for him and have no idea what he's about. So it was just set for failure from the outset.
I'll take some of the things you say. Obviously, I don't agree totally on the players that they brought in. I think Ben Chilwell's gone well since they signed him, and obviously Mendy as a keeper is an improvement on Kepa. I'm just going to put a few thoughts back, and obviously at the end of this, just come in and sort of let me know what you think. And basically, I read a very interesting piece on the article this morning from Simon Johnson, basically talking about Frank Lampard and you know what the Athletic are like. They seem to get the backstory in a lot of sources, and a lot of it seems to be correct. And it was really interesting to see. I'm going to start on sort of Frank Lampard and what he was getting paid a year and sort of the way that he came into Chelsea. When you say that no one wanted the role at Chelsea, because there was a transfer ban. I mean, it's still a massive job, and obviously they ended up only having one window where they were banned for. They got it overturned, and in January they chose not to spend money. But from the outset, Frank seemed to never really want to be. He wasn't seen as sort of a long-term successor at Chelsea, in my opinion. He was only paid £4 million a year, right? And that compares with Bielsa, who was on £6 million in the Championship at Leeds. He's probably now gone up. Now he's in the Premier League. But you look at Jose and Conte; they were both on 10 million plus. So Lampard's been underpaid. You say underpaid, but he's been paid probably what his experience is worth. But it shows you that Chelsea didn't value him in the same regard that they did in the Conte and Mourinho. So that obviously started. I mean, it was quite interesting in the article that it talked about Marino or Mariana Granazovica. I don't know how to pronounce it. But
Well
obviously,
said.
well said. The top dog at
Monaco.
Chelsea. Yeah, exactly. Who runs that club? Or the behind the scenes of that club. And it seemed that there was a big issue when you talk about Kepa and obviously the failings. There's no doubt that Kepa has underachieved at Chelsea, and he's been made a lot of errors, noticeably in the FA Cup this weekend once again. But you've got to look at it, and from Chelsea's point of view, I think one of the things that soured the relationship was that Kepa came in, and obviously he's a £72 million player. That's a £72 million asset that the club have bought, right? So they've obviously spent a lot of money, and they whether or not he achieves whatever, they want to be able to. If they need to sell him on, they need to be able to sell him on for as much money as they can, recuperate that £72 million asset that the club has bought. I know we're talking about players, but in essence, if it was a machine that a company's bought for 72 million quid and you disregarded it after it had a few faults, you'd be like, shit, we need to try and fix this machine rather than rather than putting it away. And obviously, I think that seemed to sour the relationship from the early onset. And Lampard insisted he wasn't good enough. He's probably correct. It wasn't Lampard's signing. And another interesting fact in terms of the transfers was that Declan Rice apparently was top on Frank Lampard's transfer list, right? But obviously he was a former Chelsea youth player, and Chelsea let him go. And it seemed that the hierarchy at Chelsea were very angry that Lampard was desperate to bring him back. And obviously, you look at the likes of Havertz, Werner and Kepa, the situation that they found themselves in with these players that are combined 200 million quid, for instance, all sort of been used poorly or on the sidelines. There's rumblings that the hierarchy at Manchester City, at Chelsea, were very disgruntled that the way that Lampard is sort of disregarding these assets, and it was going to cost the club financially by lowering the value of these players if they were trying to sell them on. Which I did find really interesting. One thing that has to be commended, and you mentioned it, that he brought in the likes of Tomori and also Mason Mount at Derby. he's the first manager to play over 5 youth team players at Chelsea apparently ever. So you've got to give him credit where credit's due. I mean, the fact that he brought through 8 academy players, they've all made the debut. There's no doubt that the likes of Mason Mount now is an asset that Chelsea could sell on for tens of millions. Like Tomori's now on loan, I know, but Callum Hudson-Odoi,
25 million to AC Milan. Tomori went for. Yeah.
Is it? Yeah, so you look at these players and you've got to think that Lampard has done something right. Last year, for me, though, I don't think the 66 points that they amassed last year is particularly impressive. The average points to come in fourth is 71 points, right? So they got 66. So you could argue they got lucky last year for coming fourth. Obviously, Leicester's collapse late on in the season gave them a gap. And to be fair, Lampard got there, but they lost in a final where they were favourites against Arsenal. And there's a thing that he achieved well. He achieved a lot last year. And for me, I don't think he did. I think he did what he was supposed to. I know he didn't spend any money, but they lost a player in Hazard, but they still had a great squad. Everyone's saying it was a team full of kids. It was nonsense. I mean, Tammy Abraham took his chance, fair play at the start of the season.
Kante World Cup winner.
Exactly. There's so many players in that squad that were still world class, and I don't know if there's anything else on from that I've said that you want to pick up on, because I've got a bit more to go, but I'll let you lads jump in.
Yeah, I was going to say to Dan, what's your view on Kepa and Mendy as a top flight sort of keeper? Obviously, you're a bit more knowledgeable goalkeeper than myself, so I think I'd be interested to hear what you think on Kepa.
I don't know, mate. I've seen you in five-a-side.
I mean, it's just a terrible, like the Kepa deal. He reminds me a lot of David De Gea when he first came to England. But the difference was when Man United signed De Gea, you'd heard of him. Like, he'd been playing well for Atletico Madrid in the Champions League, and he's played in those high sort of teams in Spain. But when they broke the news that they were signing Kepa world record deal, I'd never even heard of him. I'd never heard of him, never seen what he'd been doing. So he comes over, and I think in England you've got to be a very much all-rounded goalkeeper. You have teams, you'll play some teams that will pop you off the park. You have that, then you can play Stoke or Blackburn, which David De Gea found out, and they just heave balls into the box, and you've got to be physically strong to deal with them, and which Kepa isn't. And that's something that De Gea really worked on really well, and that made him better to go along with his shot-stopping ability. But what seems to have happened to Kepa is that he's gone the other way. He's come to England, not done too well, and his shot-stopping's just gone. He can't keep a ball out of the net. He's not particularly good. If you think of him, and you look at all the good goalkeepers, the great goalkeepers, you look at them and you think, you can tell me, what are they good at? Ederson at Man City, unbelievable with his feet. Alisson at Liverpool, just all-round, makes things look easy. De Gea, unbelievable reactions. Give me one good thing that Kepa can do.
Nothing.
Nothing comes
Pick the ball out of his net.
He's had a lot of experience at that one.
And then, as you said, they bring Mendy in to sort out the problem. But I mean, I saw a tweet when he signed, saying, because obviously all the Chelsea fans got overly excited about a new goalkeeper replacing Kepa. But I saw one tweet that said, this bloke's just been signed. He's in his late 20s, signed for less than 20 million. All the best goalkeepers in the world now are going for over 50, as you can see with Ederson and Alisson and you worldwide. So he's not going to change too much, I don't think.
Yeah, I think when he came in,
average.
It seemed like a sort of plaster over a bandage, didn't it? Sort of, he looked decent enough at the start. I mean, everyone thought, oh, we've got a worldie here, and I think it's the curtains have slowly been drawn, and you can see that he isn't that sort of keeper, is he?
He came in, he kept 5 clean sheets in a row or something. They think, oh, brilliant, it's all changed around, but then the mistakes just keep on creeping in, don't they?
Harb, I want to ask you a question. Hello. Right. So obviously Chelsea have had success in the past. What do you make on the way that they have the policy on managers? I mean, I read a tweet from Gary Lineker this morning who suggested that it was a disgrace basically that Lampard's been sacked and they should have given him time, which rattled me. And I'm going to tell you why after you've sort of had a go. But what was your thoughts? What's your opinion on the way that Chelsea sort of deal with their managers and they have sort of a merry-go-round going?
Yeah, but I just think that different clubs have different sort of MOs. You know, Liverpool, they've been building around Klopp. They've had a clear strategy around Klopp. They've given Klopp the keys to Anfield. Very, very similar to sort of Bielsa setup where Bielsa's word goes. Klopp's the main man there. And then you look at Man City. It's built around Pep. We know obviously what they're going to do. And Manchester United now have sort of gone straight for Ole with sort of a top-down organisation. And then Chelsea the same. I think Chelsea have, as you rightly pointed out on Twitter, they have been one of the most successful British clubs in recent history. I think they've grasped you know, they were the first sort of millionaire club with Abramovich coming in, caused a lot of stir, but actually they've done it properly, and I think it's genuinely, you won't find anyone that genuinely follows football with half an interest that's surprised Chelsea's done that. But I think it's to their credit because they know how to win. You know, and there's no manager. Di Matteo got sacked. No manager gets time at Chelsea because they spend the money. He puts the money down. He wants instant results. And I don't, you know, obviously it's not the traditional quote unquote British way of doing it, but I just think that it's a very proven model now that it works for Chelsea. And I find it hard for someone like Gary Lineker to criticise it. He's been out the game sort of 30 years. You don't have one manager like Sir Alex for 15 years anymore. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, you're spot on. That is the point that I want to make. That you look at it, the football isn't in the 90s anymore, is it? You don't have time to build. I mean, the way that the money's come into the game, the way that players, TV broadcasting, or the way that fans' attitudes are, we're sort of social media, especially, sort of hype that up. That if a couple of bad games and it's all over. Look at Liverpool now. I mean, there are people saying that his Klopp lost his touch. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, if Sir Alex Ferguson had a patch of losing 4 or 5 games, or which they had, the hype doesn't get built as much because obviously we're not all as in touch. I just want to touch upon, obviously, Chelsea have had immense success under the Abramovich era. They're the most successful British club. Obviously, they've won Champions Leagues, multiple Premier Leagues, and they've done it under 7, 8, 9, 10 managers. You look at it since Ranieri got sacked, that Jose Mourinho came in, did a brilliant job. Avram Grant then came in, Champions League runner-up. Gus Hiddink won a FA Cup, I believe. Ancelotti wins a Premier League. Di Matteo wins a Champions League. Jose comes back in and wins a league. Conte's come and won a league. Sarri's Sarri and Benitez have both won Europa Leagues. You look at the managers that they've gone through, and that's all since 2005. So it's 15, 16 years, maybe 8 or 9 managers I've just listed off there, and they've all won trophies. And this sort of, I think, because Lampard's British and he's well supported amongst the media, maybe because he's obviously got a lot of friends, etc.
Got a lot of friends in the media, evidently.
Exactly.
Given the news today.
Exactly, it seems to have caused uproar as if it's wrong. And at the end of the day, Chelsea have had immense success. I can't remember exactly what Lineker said, but it was when are they going to learn? I mean, learn. They've won the most amount of trophies in the last 15 years of all British clubs. They're an elite football club, and Lampard clearly wasn't doing the job. And I think that Chelsea's success has been built on this sort of turnover of managers. And there's no doubt that there's no room for loyalty in football. It goes either way, and obviously Lampard will be a Chelsea legend forever. But you just have to look at his win percentage. It's 52%. The lowest of all managers that have managed over 50 games. And there's no doubt that Lampard has had the chance. He spent over 200 million and he wasn't doing results. I thought that they came out today and said the club isn't in the position that they expect it or wanted it to be. And people said it was harsh, and it probably was a little bit harsh, but it's true. You know what I mean? It's harsh but fair. I think they're not in the position they want to be. And it's interesting to see. I just pick up on the article that I read on The Athletic that it interestingly said that Frank Lampard didn't speak to any of his players, apparently. So if he wasn't picking his players, sources say
he spoke to Mason Mount.
he went 3 months without speaking to players. I mean, he's trying to build a culture in the club and change it because obviously Chelsea's notoriously had this turnover of managers, and he didn't want the players to be going against the manager as soon as things got tough, which obviously which they did, and it's become a buzzword in sport. And I don't really like the team culture. I mean, culture comes with winning, it comes with history, and comes with legacy, and it comes with proper leaders in the dressing room and leadership from the top, which doesn't seem to have been the case from Frank Lampard. So he's been replaced by Thomas Tuchel. What have you got? Any thoughts, Dan? Thomas Tuchel. Any thoughts on what he's going to do? He's very much of a Klopp mould in terms of he's gone from Mainz to Dortmund to a big club. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, well, he went to Dortmund, didn't he? And he did well with Dortmund, and then kind of gets his chance at the PSG at the big job. I was quite surprised when he got sacked from PSG. I think he was doing a good job. Got to the Champions League final last year. Obviously, with huge expectations and the money that they spend at PSG, you need to do well. But that was the first time that PSG had got to a Champions League final. So I was quite surprised to see him take them in the right direction and then get the boot. So it was a surprising one. But it seems like a very Chelsea kind of manager. Young, ambitious, kind of likes to play some good football and got good philosophy, good footballing philosophy. Just we'll probably be having the same chat in a year and a half time about the next bloke that they get in.
Yeah, you're not wrong there, Dan. I think Tuchel plays sort of a 4-3-3 sort of attacking. He wasn't averse to putting sort of Mbappe out on the wing, where I personally think Mbappe's best positioned down the middle. But I think at Chelsea he's got an embarrassment of riches of attacking midfielders. But it's just whether he has the confidence to play that attacking style, or whether he adapts and plays a more negative brand of football where it's going to get results. It's interesting, really. I think I'd rather not be in his position deciding how he's going to play. I just think that, for me, if I was Tuchel, I've just seen the club legend be sacked. I think I'm not going to be as adventurous in my first 6 months. But that's my personal opinion. But I think that
He's got
PSG,
3 to 6 months, really, though, doesn't he, until the end of the season?
Yeah, so for me, at PSG, played nice footy, but you've got some of the world's best players in your attacking setup. So obviously, you're going to play that, and then you've got amazing centre back like Kimpembe at the back that's going to bail you out. And I think PSG always did well in the transfer market. I think it's difficult. Obviously, it's not difficult to attract players at PSG to pay the money, but he's got to have some sort of draw to draw these sort of talents in to go and play in the French league versus the German or Spanish or British league. So I think he gets a bit of credit for that. I think that his pulling power is bigger than other people think. It's just whether he gets given time and money. I think he will want to spend money. I think he'll have been given the job on the pretense to spend money in the summer, no doubt about it. Given that players like Tomori have been shifted on, I can see Chelsea really going hard in the transfer market because it's worked for him before.
So it's an interesting one then. So I'm going to put it to you. Where we'll wrap up on the Chelsea Lampard brigade. Where does Thomas Tuchel have to finish this season with Chelsea in terms of what's his aspirations? And next year, for me, I think having spent 200 million on the likes of Havertz and Ziyech and Werner and all these players. Exactly. Where does he have to finish up this season? I mean, I don't think it'll be too important this year. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it's going to be next season. Obviously, he's a German. They've got 2-star German players, etc. That hopefully should be able to help. Where does he have to finish this season and also next year? Because we all know that he's probably got 18 months to win a trophy.
It's one of them, isn't it? It's one of them. He can finish top 4 this season. Everybody goes, wow, amazing. You're going to be brilliant. Spend as much money. He can come 8th and he can go, it's not his team. Needs more time. Needs the transfer market, isn't he? So I think this year it does not. Obviously, Europe, they want Europe to attract the players, whichever players you want to sign. But next year, I reckon if they're not challenging for the title, that'll probably be him.
I agree. I think they have to challenge. What about you, Hav?
I echo exactly what Dan just said. I think that it's clear what Chelsea want. They want to win the league. And, if he doesn't do well this season, he's got a buffer of exactly what Dan said. It's not his team. I personally think they'll finish around 7th. I think they'll knock West Ham out of 7th. I think that's sort of where he should be aiming, 7th or 6th. And then maybe have a good run in the Champions League. I know you've said it. Whilst Frank was in charge, are you still thinking that Chelsea are going to win the Champions League, as?
They're my outside bet, mate. I think they've got a strong European contingent. You look at the likes of Werner, went well last year in Europe. I think in 2012, obviously they won it under Di Matteo, came in at a similar sort of point in the season. I think they finished the season in 6th or 7th. And I think they're my outside tip. I mean, obviously you look at the likes of City, Bayern Munich and whisper it, Liverpool. They're obviously the favourites for the competition, but I think if you're going for a bit of value, Chelsea are my outside bet. I wouldn't be surprised if they go well in it, to be honest with you. I think they've got Atletico next. It's a tough game, but Thomas Tuchel obviously came runner-up last year, so he knows his way or two around Europe, I suppose. Maybe shown it last year, and he could go one step further this season. But we'll move on to another club, obviously not having the best of times. Not that the manager is under any pump. We're just going to have a brief little chat, very very quickly over the FA Cup. Obviously Liverpool. Biggest game of the weekend, lost to Manchester United. I did a video on YouTube just before the FA Cup game about where things are going wrong, so head over there to see what my thoughts on Liverpool and what's going up. Dan, you're obviously a Liverpool fan like myself. I just thought we'd get your brief thoughts on what's sort of happening at Liverpool, and then see if Harvey's got much to mention before we move on to your non-league situation.
It's just, I don't know about you, but for me the balance of the whole team has just been off this year ever since Virgil unfortunately took a nasty hit from Mr. Pickford. We got away with it for a month or two before the out of form players, before some bad performances kind of sneak in. If you look at it, defensively, missing Virgil and, well, yeah, Virgil and Gomez, but mostly Virgil, we've not really suffered too bad defensively because Fabinho's gone back in there and done a fantastic job. I think he's been brilliant. Henderson playing with him now at the back as well. But if you look at it, they were our two best midfielders last year and they're playing at the back. So that just throws the whole dynamic of the team out. Then if you move on to other problems, you have Firmino's been incredibly out of form. I mean, we caught a glimpse of him back into a little bit of form against Man United on Sunday. He was dropping into those holes and creating things again, which was good to see. But we've not seen that from him all season. His touches have been off, hitting the target. He's not scored goals. Mane's been unusually quiet. Salah's quiet as it is, but he's always quiet unless he's running in behind. So I just think it's the whole dynamic of the team. Very easily sorted out with another centre-back, as easy as that sounds. And it's what everybody's saying, but that's what I think it needs.
Does it look like it's coming, Harv?
Does it?
I think, obviously, Dan's absolutely spot on. It's clear to see where the balance... Who's got the door going?
Oh, no idea, mate. Special treat.
Hey, stripper's arrived as it has.
That's it, you know. I mean, you were tweeting "Good night, hooker" on Saturday,
yeah,
weren't you?
He got knocked out.
Yeah, I wondered what you were meaning. Continue.
Yeah, so no, but for me, I think I'd just like to ask Dan on he's been a youth team player that's played at a high pressure club like Leeds, and how do you feel that William is it Williams a young centre back?
Williams,
yeah. Do you think how would you feel if
he was at Kidderminster last year, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was playing our league last year against teachers such as myself. So I mean, it's in those sort of games like yesterday when he's up against Rashford. I mean, I thought when he first came into the team, he did well against Tottenham, but that was because Mourinho parked his bus at Anfield, so he didn't really get tested too much. In a couple of games since, he got caught out against Aston Villa. Aston Villa's youth team for their goal. Dived into a couple with Rashford yesterday. Caught out and then misses the ball for the second goal. So I think you can tell early on with defenders, they just don't like good defenders that will be good in the future. They have that decision making from an early age, and
they can read the game, I suppose, isn't it?
Exactly, and I just see his decision making not quite up to it, especially for a team like Liverpool.
He's not got the pace as well. I think that's pretty clear. He seems to be, whether that'll come, I mean, it never came for me. I was slow from birth. Bambi on ice, some people say. But whether it'll come or not, who knows? But he seems a bit slow. What about you, Arv? I mean, I'm sure you want to touch upon it. You have a few messages on WhatsApp, haven't you? You seem to be reveling in it. Wow. I mean, Leeds aren't going too well, but we're forgetting about them.
Yeah, I'm just giving you a bit of your own back. You were asking for trophy engravers 4 games ago, so I was just reminding you of that a bit. I think those that listening will appreciate that there's someone out there giving you a bit back, putting you back in your box a bit. But I've strategically done the show tonight instead of tomorrow night, so if the Mighty Whites do have a massive clusterfuck up at St James's, then we won't have to worry about it till the week after. So I just think that Liverpool, I think. Obviously, your front three aren't firing, that's clear as day, but Dan's absolutely spot on. The balance of the team is completely off when you've got makeshift centre-backs, your midfield engine room, Premier League games that are tight and scrappy, you need your midfield there, you need it to be solid, you need it to be creative. I think Trent's form is also a symptom of a makeshift back four. Yeah, and that's it. I think there's nothing more to say other than it's simple. You either buy a centre-back or you bite the bullet and try and gamble on staying in the top 4 this season. I don't think Klopp's got many choices, really.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's up to Klopp, mate. I think, obviously, I don't think that we're buying a centre-back. I think it doesn't seem to be on the club's radar. I mean, it's pretty clear for everyone to see that a decent centre-back would definitely help. You can't rely on Joel Matip. I think with Matip and Fabinho, that's a good enough two, in my opinion, to sort of to play in any game at the moment. But obviously, you can't rely on Matip.
Matip plays one in every 4 games, so
exactly,
doesn't it?
So he's made of chipsticks, isn't he? It's like, what can we do? So yeah, I think fair play to United. I thought they played pretty well. I thought it was a good game. I didn't think Liverpool were that bad, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. I thought they were
Brilliant
Nice to
game
see
of
Liverpool
football.
scoring a goal, though.
Yeah, exactly. I thought Salah missed a decent chance. Obviously, I think they had a couple of chances. Poor from Alisson, to be honest with you. I thought for a keeper of his standards, shouldn't be getting beat on his own side. But obviously, Thiago in the wall, or not in the wall, just stood there at 5'3", like fucking Frodo Baggins. I mean, it was never going to help. Yeah, I mean, elsewhere in the FA Cup, obviously just rounding it up, Cheltenham nearly had a great result against Man City. Poor for them at the end. Obviously, Chelsea beat Luton, and then the manager gets a sack. Aston Villa obviously beat Newcastle in the Premier League, which was a good result, and Villa are flying high. But yeah, other than that, Leeds didn't play this weekend because they got battered against Crawley, didn't they, Harv? So it was a shame they had a weekend off.
Just letting a lower league team have a day out for once. We're always
Yeah,
in the limelight. Let someone else have it.
Exactly. If anybody else from Towie wants to go, then just play Leeds United. It's easy enough. Yeah, I mean, the FA Cup is what it is. I mean, to be honest with you, I thought I'd rather be out at this stage with the Champions League and Premier League. But when we're not competing for the Premier League anymore, probably anyway. Disappointing to see. But we'll move on. Obviously, football is still going on in the higher echelons of the division. But lower down the table, I don't know if people have seen. Obviously, we're a big fan of all walks of football, aren't we, Harv? But non-league, I suppose,
big believer in non-league. Big
believer in non-league. Conference North, obviously, where our mighty Harrogate Town used to be before they became big time, and where our current guest is. It's off, isn't it, Dan? You're having a few weeks off to rest your legs.
A few weeks off, yeah. Funding gone to kaput. Government doesn't like to give us any more money. So it's a strange one, really. The season was only ever going to start, obviously, with no fans in the stadium. It was only ever going to start on the back of financial backing from the government, which originally it was given. All the teams were given a help out package for 3 months at the start of the season to get the season going. Hopefully, obviously, with the view to get fans in. Obviously, that hasn't happened because of the disease. So 3 months has come around. It's time for more grant money, but the government are not very keen to give it out as easily as they did at the start of the season, which is a shame.
Is there not anything that the Premier League can do, or does that not get sort of the FA?
I'm not too sure, to be honest. It's more government, I think.
Yeah.
The Premier League have helped a lot in the EFL, haven't they? I think if they're going to start funding all sorts of football, then it would be unfair because they have done well.
Yeah.
Support the EFL, haven't they?
I mean, I'll just interject a bit. A bit of the background is basically they were given a grant to start the season, and then they basically come back for the second round of funding, as Dan explained, and they've been promised grants, and now they've come back, and Sport England and the government, both Plan A and Plan B, have both basically want to indebt the clubs. So they want to indebt the clubs on projected earnings for next season, which I just think that absolutely right from the Conference North and Conference National League North and South teams to say, hang on a minute, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. Any self-respecting businessman is not going to leverage the club in debt on speculation of next season when we don't know where we're going to be in 3 months' time. And I think that's where the problem lies, is actually the ethics behind the grant. They want to indebt these clubs forever in a day on projected earnings of next season when they've not earned anything this season. And I just think that, Dan raised a really, interesting point. And this is why I'm a big believer in why this issue needs to be sorted out, is Williams was on loan at Kidderminster last season. Whether you like it or not, this is the breeding ground of English football, is the lower leagues. And I just think that it's, there's enough money going around in the FA. I know the government have got to stop, how much further do we have to go with funding wise? There is an ethics behind it because they haven't funded lower league rugby, for example. They put a stop and someone has to suffer.
Well, they did give rugby £160 million payout.
I think it's one of them. It's either you back the teams throughout the whole season, give us the money, back the teams, or just don't start it at all. Yeah. I mean, I understand if they don't want to back something like non-league football, then there is a global pandemic. The money probably could be spent in other areas for the good of the country. But don't start the season and then can it halfway through.
So it looks like obviously there's potential that it could just be null and void, etc.
Yeah, it could be exactly like last year. Could be a null and void situation. Shame. Or it could be turned to. You're getting to a point as well. I mean, we're at the end of January, and we're not even halfway through the season yet. So it's going to be a big backlog of fixtures towards the end of the season as well. but it could be
So
null
how are
and
you
void.
guys? Are you guys training, or are you all like? Do you get paid furlough and stuff? I
No,
mean,
we got put on. Got the text this morning. Actually, we're been put on furlough until it gets sorted out.
right.
So I wasn't there last year, but I've been told last year that they were put on furlough until the end of the season, until it got decided. So no training for us.
Fair enough. I mean, one of those things, and it's a crazy, weird world that we're all living in. Who would have thought that in March 2020 that we'd be sitting here going, who knows when football's coming back this season? I suppose at that sort of level. Dan, I just want to ask you a few questions. Obviously, we've got you on. You've played with a few people in your time. Played at Leeds United.
Big
Harv's,
Arv.
yeah, Big Harv. Exactly, he's the best. I was going to ask you who's the best player called Harvey that you've played with, and I'm sure it's him. But no, is there anything from obviously your Leeds United days? I mean, I think you left Leeds United in 2015, didn't you? And you played at Guiseley, and obviously now at Bradford, PA. Yeah, I just from my perspective, obviously. Who is the best player you've played with, really? I know you played at the England youth team level. And when you were at a young age, did you notice anyone play against, or had you played anyone that you noticed at the time you thought they're going to be a player and it's turned out that way?
Yeah, plenty of good players. I was very fortunate to play with a lot of good players back in my youth days. Go away from England at a young age. Ruben Loftus-Cheek, he was unbelievable. I remember seeing him for the first time, and he was a foot taller than everybody else and just ran the midfield so easily in international matches. He was a joke. Seriously good player. Obviously, going through Leeds, Lewis Cook, naturally, technically, and tactically, one of the best players I played with at Leeds. He was absolutely brilliant. Would quite happily walk into any academy side when he was from a young age. Obviously, I played in Calvin Phillips's first.
I was going to say, if you don't say him, I'm going to come right out.
I remember him playing. He was thinking, yeah, this guy's he's all right. He's all right. Didn't think he was anything special. But the scout that scouted him came over to me after the game and said, "Oh, that Calvin looks good, doesn't he?" And I thought, eh. But then again, that's probably why he's the scout and I'm no longer in football. So
that's what most football fans say now. Anyway, it's only Leeds fans who think he's any good.
Well, I think you'll find, Dan, when I went to watch you in the Youth FA Cup against Reading, where you scored one of the most spectacular own goals I've ever seen, when the blokes hit it from 40 yards, it's bounced off 3 posts and in off your ass. Phillips ran the show that day, and so I do have a hand in saying that I did spot Phillips from a young age.
It's all down to you.
Exactly,
yeah,
it's all you have.
I called it from an early day. He had his afro and he liked a red card, did Phillips, didn't he?
But it is weird. It is weird how youth football works like that. I remember in the last ever game I played for England, I played Dele Alli was in the team, and he was playing at MK Dons at the time in League One and doing really well. But he didn't look at anything spectacular within the under-17s at England. There was 3 or 4 midfielders that looked better than him during the match. So it's strange how it goes, football.
Definitely. I mean,
it's all about opinions.
Yeah, and obviously, like Delhi, I mean, who would have thought about 4 years ago, I thought he was going to be the best central midfielder England had ever seen, and dropped off like a cliff, hasn't he, since then? Harvey, you got any other questions for Dan in terms of specifically?
I mean, we could probably do a whole nother episode on this, Dan, but Dan was unfortunate enough to be at Leeds under the Cellino eras when it was an absolute circus at Thorpe Arch. So I think, Dan, you told me a good story about when he turned up one day and the cleaners had been sacked. You know, and just enlighten us how far Leeds have come with the carry on that used to be.
I'll tell you what, from Bielsa, from Cellino to Bielsa, remember we were sitting all in the changing room. First year pros were in the changing room one day. We just finished a training session, and Cellino walks into the changing room. It's like, what's he in there for? Walks into the toilet, picks up a bag of something, and then walks back out again. It was mental.
He's just a strange guy, wasn't he? I remember watching you at Thorpe Arch, and Cellino would just be there, just chain smoking on the side. Now, he's just a weird guy, wasn't it? It was a strange
Christmas as well from the training ground. No Christmas decorations that year.
Yeah, and he emptied the pool. That was his biggest.
Emptied the pool. I love
that. Was when you stopped liking him, wasn't it, Dan? He used to do a few lengths after training, and he got rid of that.
I know. Felt like David Hasselhoff until Cellino came.
Dan, I just wanted to ask, obviously, yourself, I've known you for many years, but you're a fairly normal guy and stuff and all that. But I was listening to a podcast that some Liverpool people did, basically about youth players who get let go, and obviously yourself playing at England youth level, and obviously in the lead setup for many years. How is it when you get let go in terms of from sort of, your hopes and dreams of being a Premier League footballer, obviously Championship, I know Leeds were in at the time, but you know what I mean, a top class footballer, and how that is. I'm sure you played a lot of lads who were let go at a similar sort of stage at your early 20s or late teens and stuff, and you're having that hopes and dreams ripped away from you, and sort of how it is. And you see a lot of people go one or two ways, don't you? And it seems that obviously yourself, you're absolutely fine and all that, but you hear a few sad stories where footballers sort of can't deal with the rejection.
It is tough. I've seen it. I've seen it for myself. There are some people that love football so much and want it to be their whole life that they don't have anything else to fall back on when that moment comes. So they end up, they get released at that age, but all they've ever wanted to be was a footballer. Luckily, I had other interests. I was always a big fan of teaching. I did a placement whilst I was at Leeds and before, so I absolutely loved that. So I knew that if football went wrong, that's something that I could fall back onto. I always struggled really during football, especially playing for Leeds, to handle the pressure. And I really struggled with match day nerves, something that which then carried over to Guiseley. So when I left Leeds, went to Guiseley, especially my second year there, had a few bad games, and that really got to me. I'd wake up in the morning, I'd literally would not want to get out of the bed at the prospect of going to training in the evening and stuff like that. So I was quite happy to get away from football for a bit. So having got away from the whole football and given it 3 years to go back into it, I've enjoyed it so much more this season, playing with a good bunch of people and just knowing that it's not your whole life. Knowing that you're fine at home, it's not your number one income, it's not your job, but really, really just doing it for the fun of it.
Yeah, and I mean, I've noticed, obviously, I played cricket with you, and I think cricket, that year that you left Leeds, I think it was the first season where you sort of could play sport, and you noticed in yourself, like, you were literally all over cricket, and you were playing with
my batting average went up.
Yeah, that's it, mate. Couldn't get you out, and and that for me is, I think you were lucky in a way that, one, obviously I know your dad quite well, and you've never really had that pressure that I think, unfortunately, some footballers that don't maybe have, their dad or their mum or their uncle or whoever really pushes them to play football as a life, where football was always a choice for you, and I think, obviously, knowing you now, I've never seen you as happy at a club as Park Avenue, and I think you even said it. You've never enjoyed football as much as you have now, playing in the Conference North.
Yeah. You touched on that.
Or not playing in the Conference North, like
yeah,
at the moment.
well, yeah, that's it, mate. Yeah.
No, the day when I decided to stop playing football, it was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had with my dad. Telling him that I wasn't playing football anymore, because my dad has been there for me throughout. He's taken me to every training session, every away match for 10 years. It was a real passion of his, so that was a real tough situation and tough conversation to have with him, but he was absolutely fine with it. But yeah, no, I'd like to think if my attitude was different, if I loved football as much as I love cricket, for example, then I probably could still be playing full time and not have stopped. But you can't help but make up your brain, can you?
Yeah, no, life is what it is, I suppose, and things work out that way. And I've really enjoyed listening to that, and obviously, love to have you on today. Definitely do it again sometime. Harvey, any last words?
No, other than hgcbd.co.uk. No splinters, 10% off. Get all your CBD oil. If you have any questions, give us a message. And that's about it, mate.
I'll have to drop it in at the start, because the end is obviously where the less people listening. So we'll make sure I'll put it in the.
The loyal listeners will buy. They'll support me.
Yeah, they will support our friend Harv. It keeps me not having to pay him for this. All right, Dan. Thank you very much for joining us, Harv.
Thank you very much for having me.
Legend. All the best. All the best. God bless, Harv.
Yeah, all the best. God bless, fellas.